So hello, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, depending on where you are now. My name is Violeta Bava. I'm the co-head of the industry at Vision Durel, and it's a very big honor to have the opportunity to present this talk, this industry talk. This is part of a number of talks we are proposing, since we think it's really urgent and relevant to discuss among colleagues about this very unprecedented situation, and that we can think together about how we can find possibly solutions, or how do we face the common problems. So now I will thank Sean Hopewell for the moderation, and I will leave the floor to him to moderate. And thanks again to these great guest speakers. Thank you very much. Enjoy.
Thank you very much, Violeta. Muchísimas gracias. And as Violeta said, good morning, good evening, or good late night, which reminds us that this talk, which is the second film industry talk at Vision Durel in Switzerland, Nyon in Switzerland, which is about film industry under Corona times, labs, markets, sales, and producers, is also part and a response to the Corona COVID-19 crisis. One element, and I think this is an upside in this crisis, is that it might have been difficult to put together such a powerful and, I hope, entertaining panel as we have today. In other words, and you might be able to see them, they're rather like contestants in a reality quiz. We have in boxes Laurent Steiert from the cinema part of the Swiss Office of Culture, Jérôme Paillard, head of the Marché du Film, and going from at least my left to right, Daniela Elstner, head of UniFrance, Heino Deckert at Germany's Deckert Films, Roberto, Olla, head of Eurimages, and Marit van den Elshout at the Rotterdam IFFR Pro. Just a little bit of housekeeping. The idea is that the panelists and I will talk for about 40 to 50 minutes. And then afterwards, we will welcome questions, which you can send by chat. And we will then order, and I will read out some of the questions. To begin at the beginning, maybe one obvious question and a kind of mise en scène is to ask the panel one by one to talk briefly, not more than about a minute, about how they have reacted to date to the COVID crisis. I wonder then if maybe Daniela, you could begin. Hello. Daniela, can you hear me?
Do you hear me?
I can certainly hear you, yes.
Okay, good. So sorry. So as many of you know, but not everyone might know, UniFrance is an association for the promotion of French cinema all over the world. So by definition, our mission is to bring the French films, to be with the French films all over the world, which right now is obviously done in a digital, virtual, whatever form. So we had very quickly to adapt to the situation as everyone. What we try and what we do weekly is to keep everyone informed about what's happening, what's going on in the world, because things are going so quickly. The changes, the cinemas that were shut down basically 8 weeks ago now in almost all countries. What happened to the French films, what happened to the other films. what were the measures taken by the government. So we try to keep everyone informed. We had also planned, it was a quite tough decision, but we made the decision not to send any artists to the festival, which was quite sad, but it was the reality beginning of March, and I think we did the right choice. So, well, we adapt, we try to keep in touch with everyone. We launched several initiatives. One is My French Film Festival online, which we do yearly in January. We relaunched it with more than 70 short films and now 30 feature-length films. They are all subtitled in more than 10 languages. So this is something to stay in contact with the world, with our cinema. And we have several other initiatives, but it might be too long to talk about it. So I think our main thing is keep in touch. So with the whole world. Thank you.
Idea of the reaction to My French Film Festival in terms of audience or anything like that?
We have by now, here, terrible feedback. We have around over 800,000 views for the moment. The specificity of this edition is that it's only on our own website, and for short films also on our YouTube and Facebook site. So, but 800,000 views is quite a lot in for such a short time. But also Japan we have a lot of fans in Japan. So thanks to all of you, if some listen who were going on our website. So it's and I think it's also a very good initiative for all. I mean, in France, you know, there are a lot of embassies, Institut Français, Alliance. They all love to work on it because they get it subtitled in almost like their languages in their countries. So it's a quite important initiative which goes down to the bottom line. We keep contact and we talk to people through our.
Thank you. Laurent, I saw you come online. I wonder if you could explain how you have reacted to date as part of the Swiss government to the crisis.
Yeah, well, actually, the Swiss government adopted in March, early March, a multi-billion franc package for the economy in general, especially labor market aids for the partial unemployment and the independent sector as well. And this, of course, including all the commercial companies active in the audiovisual sector as well. So these measures are going on, like, I guess, in the most of our neighboring countries as well. And besides that, and you mentioned in an earlier phone call, already the Swiss government also adopted a specific budget line for the culture, about 280 million francs, which is about 260 million euros. This is specific for the cultural sector, including, of course, the audiovisual cultural sector. And this fund is intended to compensate doing financial compensation for canceled projects, especially in the production, but also compensating losses for, I would say, art house cinemas or distributors, or all cultural actors in the audiovisual sector. So this aid is not coordinated in our film department, but it is distributed by the cantons, so that each member states in Switzerland, which makes the coordination sometimes not easy, but right now we are in very tight discussions with the canton, especially in the film sector. What we did in the film department for the production, we quickly analyzed all the productions that had to be interrupted and could not start or had to be postponed. And we also discussed with the national TV and other regional funds, of course, and with the co-production partner countries like the CNC or the FFA, how co-productions, how they would be postponed, what were the implications, etc. In Switzerland, right now there are about 10 long feature films concerned, like 3 documentaries and about 7 fiction films. So this is not a direct compensation we will do now, but we will wait until these shootings will go on. Mostly they're planned for late August, September, October, whenever. It's really hard to say. And then they will come back and tell us how big the losses are and how big the losses are that were not compensated by these other federal measures I just mentioned.
And the 280 million euros, is that for a certain number of months, or is it sine diem, or?
Well, actually, it is linked to a legal base that is valid for 2 months. So the main issue will be to evaluate how much money has been spent already by May. And the main objective will be to, of course, to extend this 2 month legal base, this ordinance, cultural ordinance, to a maximum period of 6 months, which is the period where the government can decide, like without a parliament, or like urgent decision, take urgent decisions. So this is this will be at the maximum for probably a 6 month period. However, I'm doing a little longer, but I'm sorry. Within the production, that's what we did, and in the distribution funding, we were especially speeding up the funding, and we were raising the funding intensity up to 90% for certain funding instruments. So distributors can spend their automatic funding more faster. And for the festival, which, I mean, like Nyon is concerned, we quickly announced that we were maintaining our multi-annual funding even for canceled editions, because it's a continuity, and if you don't fund now, you won't fund in 1 year when it's maybe happening again in a physical way. So
fantastic. Maybe it'd be logical to ask Roberto, since you are head of a fund, there is a certain contiguity with Laurent, to comment as well about how you have reacted, because I know you've reacted. I've been onto your website to date to the pandemic.
Well, we didn't have the time to panic. Basically, we took 2 sets of measures. The first one was towards the beneficiaries of Eurimages funding, the producers essentially. And the second one towards the member states, the 41 member states that are the decision-making process of Eurimages. So we had to deal both with what we have already and making sure that we keep on functioning for the future. Now, our support agreements already had a provision pertaining to force majeure. So any project that had to stop shooting, for instance, or for which distribution, theatrical distribution could not happen because of COVID-19, is covered by this force majeure provision. For instance, if the shooting started but had to stop, and we have a number of projects in this situation, we have paid the first installment that is due on the first day of shooting, despite the fact that the shooting had to be interrupted.
Sorry, have you pushed back deadlines for applications?
No, we have not. Basically, we had a deadline for application on the 16th of April, and we have kept that one. The problem for that particular aspect is how to ensure a decision-making process that is based on meetings between representatives coming from the 41 countries. How do you transform it into a completely dematerialized system? So we have introduced a written procedure that did not exist in Eurimages that required unanimity. So we had to have all the member states agreeing in creating a new way of deciding. And so the new projects are going to be analyzed by us in Strasbourg, then discussed through video conferencing. And then the vote is going to go through a written procedure so that we do not block. Otherwise, Eurimages would be paralyzed if we wait until such time as borders are open again and national representatives can fly. This has been complicated because the system did not exist. So we had to have authorization to do so legally from our legal department, having the authorization from all the member states to introduce such a new procedure, and then having the technology that is reliable and transparent in terms of controlling the voting system. But coming back to the producers, what in my opinion is most important for them right now is to make sure that the fund keeps on working, despite the fact that the postal service is not necessarily working efficiently. So contracts, physical contracts, are not arriving on time. So we have completely dematerialized everything, even the electronic signature. And I tried to, Eurimages was already partly dematerialized, but this situation has pushed us to go faster and to complete the whole dematerialization of the process. So now basically we can allow payments and sign contracts digitally, and we were not doing this before COVID-19 started. So from that point of view, we ensured continuity in the activity of the fund, and especially now that the producers need more than ever the cash flow. We made sure also that those projects that were supported and that were going to be theatrically distributed in this period were not penalized, because the last installment of the Eurimages support is paid upon, among the other things, evidence that the film has been theatrically released in all the co-producing countries. Some films have decided to wait and to postpone the theatrical release later on. Some others have decided to go on VOD first, and then maybe theatrically, if possible, if their country allows it. It depends clearly on the regulations in force in each country. And we considered in Eurimages, through this force majeure provision that is included in our contract, the VOD distribution as equivalent as a theatrical distribution, in order to be able to pay the last installment and therefore give the necessary cash flow to producers in this particular moment. So that's in a nutshell what we're done, trying to keep on working business as usual for the project that have been supported already, and trying to make sure that the new applications can be assessed, analyzed, and decided upon so that we can move forward.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Roberto. You mentioned, Roberto, inventing a new system. I think somebody on our panel who's definitely had to do that is Jérôme Paillard, for whom this can't quite be business as usual, but he's maintaining the spirit of the business, and I'm sure there will be business when, Jérôme, you launch the Marché du Film online on June the 22nd. So I wonder, Jérôme, if you could talk about what you've been doing, although it has been reported, speculated upon, and then confirmed to a certain extent by you, Jérôme.
So, as everyone, so hello to everyone. As everybody, I think, of course, we had quite a difficult period where we were not knowing what we will do. And of course, for a few weeks, we were at the same time preparing for the Marché, moved to end of June for the physical market, but at the same time, we were starting to work on online market, because we knew that anyway, the Marché will not have be attended as usual. And then since now 2 weeks, we know that the festival and the Marché will not happen physically. And yes, so we decided to recreate in the virtual world what as far as possible, they can experience. So maybe I will come later more in details if you want, but the challenge was to answer to the need and the wish of most of the professionals who say we need to have some time before the summer to meet again, to meet with others, to present some films. Maybe of course some films will be old for later, but for some projects and for some films they had no other option really than to really start to work on it and to find the partners and to find financing and to think when they will be able to shoot and all of that.
Fantastic. Could maybe going on logically to another festival and the industry part of a festival, Marit, your market is late January, so one might think that you've been sitting back and studying what other people have been doing, but I'm sure you have been making already contingency plans for the market, even though it happens in something like 9 or 8 months' time.
Yes, we have obviously been quite lucky, and we felt that also when this kicked off in the beginning of March, that we still managed to have a festival this year and the market, but obviously we haven't been sitting still. Getting used, first of all, to a new way of working together, but we immediately shifted to online systems like Slack and Google Hangouts, and that went actually quite smoothly. And we did start to structure what our scenarios could be, because we don't envision having a physical festival with 2,500 people in one space already in January. I just don't think it's going to happen. And in a way, I think this is also accelerating a lot of our thinking that we were already doing in terms of what our role is in the ecosystem of the film industry as a festival, as a market, how we collaborate with other markets, and how the traveling circus is in a way affecting the climate and how our responsibility is in that. So I think it's also just accelerated a lot of issues that we were already dealing with. I can't say we already have completely concrete plans, but I think a digital aspect or digital factor will be woven in regardless, and I think that's just how we are going to work in the future. And we are now looking at all our different modules of what we're doing on the industry side, but also on a festival level. We were supposed to have a festival in April in Curacao. We've just now on our online platform released 6 former award winners of that festival, so we could still well, have some sort of a festival atmosphere. And because the festival's around films from the Caribbean region, and we wanted to, of course, put emphasis on those films. We've also released the Hubert Balsman funded film La Flor online, but not, I think, really in a way. We try to look at ways in which we can do that in an event kind of setting. So we're working very closely now with the Dutch festivals to set up on the technical side a system. So we're working with IFFR syndicates and the Netherlands Film Festival to figure out how technically we can collaborate in order to facilitate all our needs in the coming months and years, possibly. And we have just now really started to structure our brains, and we are also going to use this time to, as you say, look at what other festivals are doing, where we can collaborate. I think in any case, as markets, we will even start to collaborate more than we were already doing. I think it's necessary. And we're going to take first I was really restless. I was like, we have to come up with a plan now. And but I think we've realized that we can also use this luxury of being a bit further away still to figure out what our festival should look like.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. The person we haven't heard from yet is Heino, who in a way is in the eye of the storm as a prestigious producer, sales agent, and distributor. I know you've heard the plans which have been put into place by institutions, markets. How have you reacted, and to what extent have you been able to press forward in fulfilling the plan very quickly, in fulfilling what you wanted to do over the last month and a half?
Personally, I was very lucky because I had nothing in production or just wanted to start a feature film or something like that, a fiction film. That was not the case. So I was very lucky, and I was called by one of my funds here and asking me if I need help, because everybody, they were looking out for people who needed help. And I said immediately, no, I don't need any help. You can give it to other people. But I'm not sure, already 2 weeks after that, I was not sure if that was the right decision. Because what FFA made in Germany, the first thing they did, they was postponing their session, which was, in my eyes, a very, very bad sign. Because what Roberto said is for me very clear. The funds have to make their decision now, because we have to be ready later when we can go on with finance projects. And now it looks even that one project that I have that was ready for autumn, and I just needed one more fund, and I'm even not sure if I will get that one more fund in that time. So now there's in Germany at least a big protest from the producers, really to the funds to keep their sessions and to give up money. So I think that is on a good way. From a distribution side, it's of course, I mean, as a sales agent for fiction films, it's a catastrophe in the moment, as we are doing there mainly all right deals, and distributors are not really willing to buy in the moment. That makes it very hard. With the documentary sales company, it's a little bit easier because we also have broadcasters as customers, and they are even the other way around. They look in the moment for projects, for films, because they know already that they will run out of products in the autumn latest.
Right. Fantastic. All of you talking have, I think, suggested to a certain extent something which is key and could be called the God factor. In other words, how long will this last? Will COVID evolve? Could we be in other stages of the crisis? I wonder if you could comment very briefly on that, although I'm sure the audience will recognize that none of you are God. Heino, if you could just comment very, very briefly.
Well, I'm also not God, yeah. I think we will probably start, at least in studios or something, to shoot again. I think that will maybe happen in not so long time. Outside shooting is already difficult, and cinemas will be closed for a very long time, probably till we get an injection.
Right. Roberto?
I hope cinemas are going to be open before. It would be a shocking perspective to having to wait so long until well, I don't know how long this is going to last. On our side, we're focusing clearly more on production, and to the best of my knowledge, there is no one of our supported projects that has kept on shooting. Those that were shooting when the crisis started had to stop. Even in the north, even in Sweden, where you know, the measures are a lot more flexible as compared to other countries. To the best of my knowledge, none of our projects are currently shooting. Now, some of them have set a date for after summer. Some others they haven't, and they don't know yet when they're going to start again shooting. And I think a lot depends also on the availability of cast and crew, because there will be a moment in which commitments are going to somehow overlap, this is as much as I can see for the future. What we are trying to do to make things easier for them in the future is something that was already on the pipeline. That is, for instance, transforming our support that is paid in 3 installments currently. For next year is going to be in 2 installments. This was already approved by the board of management, so it's you know, it's a good sign for the industry, because we're going to pay 70% on the first day of shooting. That gives them a lot of oxygen, in my opinion. A couple of days ago, I was asked by the European Producers Club to exchange with them to see how you know, we could make things easier for them in the future. And they are suggesting two things that I will bring to the board of management for decision. The first one is to extend the validity of the support longer, meaning for the time being is 1 year, which is pretty generous in my opinion, but given the current circumstances, they may want to have a longer period. So I will ask the board if we can double the validity of the decision. So for 2 years, the money is blocked for the production until such time as they can start shooting. And the second question they asked us, and this is a more difficult request, is to make softer the percentage of financing confirmed before we start looking at the project. In a nutshell, Eurimages is a top financier. We arrive at the end of the financing process. And for the time being, we only ask 50% of the financing in place in each territory. Producers asked us, and I will convey this to the board of management for decision, whether we can lower that percentage. Let me try to explain in a nutshell why it is important. Many castings are not happening. If there is no casting, the broadcasters are not going to commit, because broadcasters want to know who is in the film, because for audience reasons. Without broadcasters, you cannot reach 50% of financing in place for larger budgets. For smaller projects, more art house, more artistic, public support is what makes most of the budget. And some of them will probably reach easily 50%. They can knock on our door, and then maybe we can support them if the quality is there. So the idea is, for those projects that have maybe a budget of minimum 3 or 4 million euros, for which several sources of financing are necessary, probably distributors are not ready to put a minimum guarantee in this period that is so difficult. So we need to wait for broadcasters to get on board. If broadcasters are not ready to invest, then it becomes a vicious circle. And that is one of the measures maybe that we can discuss with the board of management, make our requirements softer. And also the level of artistic and technical cooperation that we normally ask productions. Crossing borders is going to be, I think Laurent was mentioning this earlier, crossing borders is going to be more difficult. Many countries need co-productions to make film because of the size of their territory. And being too tough on the level of artistic and technical cooperation necessary for project to be supported would make projects impossible. So we will have to make it softer.
Thank you, Roberto. Laurent, I wonder if you could comment on how you see the time frame of COVID playing out.
Well, to Roberto, unfortunately, the quorum of the board of management is not reached. Otherwise, we could do a huge public debate on this. Regarding the opening, I mean, I think if we think about the cinemas, for instance, there must be a difference between the art house cinemas and the multiplex world, because they have different type of content. The big American companies have already postponed certain films releases in November, or even up to 2021. Concerning I guess that the issues are a little different. Regarding the art house environment, at least in Switzerland, we have discussions. Some of the cinemas would like to open course, in June or July. But on the other hand, they exactly know that it's going to be summer season, and that the age structure of certain art house companies or cinemas are exactly in that range of, I don't know, risk averse audiences, and it's going to be hot and summer. So it's a really difficult situation, even if it's open. So, and for the production, I think Heino said it before, I think studio shootings will start or are about to start, and outside shootings or international co-productions will have quite a hard time to start up to end of August or September, I guess. I think the most important things for us, at least as a fund, is that the content production can continue somehow and quickly, because demand for content will not be decreasing. And I think the main challenge is to keep up with deadlines, not postponing them, as we said before. And yeah, and the challenge is also to how to continue with co-production in this contained environment.
Right. Daniela, I wonder if you have a sense of how the current scenario could play out going forward. If you
well,
go ahead.
I don't, but I think there are two things. One is the reality, and the other thing is a sort of wish thinking, and which I think is very important to keep up with, because as far as I see from our members, and that's what Jérôme also said, I think it's very important to set up some dates where virtually or real, we don't know, but there are things going on towards we are all working to. So I know that it's a specific problem, of course, for productions when they can go back or not. It's a problem for theaters, but I think we have to establish several plans, and we have to establish them in a way that we can really adapt to the real situation. But for me, it's a little bit difficult to say, like, even if when we're discussing with our own members, sales agents, distributors, but even artists, like when you start a meeting and you say, oh, well, it will take at least 1 year, if not more, etc. It's like you will not get any discussions ongoing, because it's just desperating, and we actually don't know. So what we try to do with UniFrance is to get different ways of like different projects going on. We try to, I think the virtual Cannes market is something that is set up like a date end of June, which does, it's very important, as Jérôme said, that we have something before the summer. Yes. I also think, and I'm saying that I think it's really important. We are all watching a lot of films. We are talking a lot about the film industry, but what I miss most, and I feel a lot of people miss, is the shared experience of watching a film. We don't go to cinema basically, and we don't speak about films so much anymore. And I think to set up meeting points where films will be the center of our, how can we get the films out, how can we sell them, whatever, we don't know, but exchange on an international label between all of us and say, well, that's going on, that's the film I will have, that's the film I propose, maybe it's only next year, but at least let's see, what do you think, etc. I think this is something where we as UniFrance also want to be part in trying maybe to make directors speak about not only their upcoming projects, but also their career, their films, etc. I think we have to recenter discussions about cinema into our daily work, etc. And for this, we need some starting points, some dates we need to find. And I think Nyon has proven that it's a great idea to do something. I don't say that every festival should be digital, because I think it's a very complicated decision. So I think everyone has a sort of duty to find out on his own, like within his own environment, what he or she, that might be reality or virtual. Finally, it doesn't really matter so much, but I think we have to, and we have to be able to adapt very quickly. So that's one of the challenges for us, like to set up projects where we can say, okay, this can go virtually, we can go into a cinema, or we can't. So we have to find a different way.
Right. If we could jump on a bit in the conversation to Jérôme and virtual markets, online markets, I think, as Daniela said, it was key for you to have a market, and that has been welcomed by a lot of people around the world who need a market. Are you already discovering, if you could talk very briefly about some of the things which can be achieved on a virtual market? And I'll ask Marit after you, and also some of the challenges, if you could just go through that a bit.
No, of course, we are just in the middle of what the discussion we had, which is that some films will not be ready. Some distributors can have already too many films waiting or holding for later. So, of course, we have to face a lot of questions from everyone. It's why we try to open every profiles. So basically, of course, the fact that there is no festivals or no selection is something which will be a question for many sales companies to really think what they do. And we know that many films were submitting or hoping to have a selection may decide to postpone maybe for 1 year or for maybe 6 months. But some films will have to premiere during Cannes. We did a survey 2-3 weeks ago now to the distributors worldwide. We got almost 400 answers. And what was very interesting that despite that situation, 80% of the buyers were willing to participate to a virtual market, but also 65% of them were still thinking they will have the need and they will acquire some films, some project or some completed films. I think that was quite an interesting answer, and I was not hoping such a high level of acquisition intentions. But to say a word on what we are doing, of course, a part offering to the companies to have a kind of virtual booth where they will be able to get a request, meeting requests and show their films. We'll have theaters where we took the decision to run the online screenings like in a market, so on a schedule. It's something we think will help to keep the momentum and the energy of the market. It's a little bit tricky with the different time zone, but basically a film will be shown at the same time in local time everywhere. So it will be at 10 a.m. First, it will start at 10 a.m. in Tokyo, and it will be 10 a.m. in Paris, and it finish 10 a.m. in Los Angeles. So that the kind of things we also have to experiment. It's very experimental, and I think it will be something really we will learn a lot now. But also we try to do a lot of activities for producers, and something we didn't expect, that we will have much more pitch sessions, for instance, or organization of speed meetings than we were even expecting in Cannes. And it's something I think which will be very active. I think also because we learn now how to work online, to do the meetings, to do conferences. I think it's something which can be very, very important. And finally, it will give the opportunity for people who maybe never came in Cannes or was not able to travel so far to participate to the market. So that, let's say, one of the positive aspects. And finally, what I want to say that I think, and Marit said that a little bit before, I think what happened now is just a very fast accelerator of a movement which was already arriving with the question of the environmental questions and the economic questions, the need or the decision to travel around the world to go from market to market is certainly, I think, something which was now really questioned. And for I think many companies now, the question will be, okay, should I really need to go to all those markets every year, and maybe now have to start to maybe change a little bit, maybe go every 2 years, and having an alternative online will be, I think, something we will have to provide anyway when we will run again the physical market.
Yes. Marit, could you jump in and just say very quickly, because we're running out of time already, as an observer in a way, but somebody who's preparing a market, can you see as some of the achievements or attractions of online markets, and what are some of the obvious drawbacks, I think, which everybody could agree with as well?
Yeah, I think there are pros and cons. I think in our case, of course, the physicality of being together around sometimes some more vulnerable and artistic films is quite crucial, and especially in terms of the co-productions that are set up, I think, in Cinemart. It takes a lot of trust to go into these collaborations, and sometimes it's of course easier by being physically together. So in first instance, of course a lot of people were thinking we can't do this without being physically together, but I think what it makes us do is that we have to look much more focused at our uniquenesses in a way. So every market, every festival has a unique quality. It is in a unique location. It produces a lot of business, or it produces, maybe in the case of Rotterdam, more this discussion and debate about cinema, and these sort of the different events we organize, this talk about cinema, the meeting of directors themselves, I think is crucial in Rotterdam. So I think we just have to really look at our unique qualities and see how we can translate those in a way online smartly. I don't think we should all, especially as co-production markets, I don't think we should all start doing our things one-on-one online. I don't think it makes sense. We have to really think about how we can do this in a smart, unique and original way, and also different from each other or complementary to each other. I do worry a bit about the more vulnerable artistic cinema in this case, I think in general, but that's our responsibility to think about that. We envision, we think that a second wave will be very likely in autumn, winter. So even if after summer things are maybe a little bit more flexible, they might as well just be very strict again in January. So that's how I sort of see the future. I think this is a reality for us for the next years, and maybe until Heino says, like Heino says, there's a vaccine. So this is the reality that we are dealing with. In terms of Rotterdam, we have, besides the co-production market and the Hubert Bas Fund, which is actually business as usual, and hopefully it will be for the coming time. We had a long selection meeting this afternoon, and we will be announcing selections soon. So for the development funding, everything will go on as usual. I think for the co-production funding, of course, is different. We're working with the same force majeure provisions that Roberto is talking about for our projects that have been supported by Creative Europe. But in terms of the market, we are really looking closely at what our added value is in any way throughout the year, as opposed to other markets, and how we can translate that to a hybrid, either hybrid or digital version, and then looking at the different modules of what our core activities are. And
right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Heino, could I ask you very quickly 2 questions? One is your reaction to virtual markets, and second, jumping on a bit to a key question. Also, what is your view, your take on alternative distribution? In other words, have you had any experience of going straight to TVOD, and has it worked?
Okay, 2 questions. Digital market is the first time actually I'm on something like that. I refused myself at the CPH in Copenhagen. I was not really ready for it. And this is now the first time. It's okay. It's what we call in Germany, we have a new phrase now. We call it new normality. So that's the new normal. And but it isn't normal at all. And I think we have to adapt. And what I see is that people are starting to get very flexible. I listen very carefully to Roberto. So all kind of things that would make Eurimages, for example, a little bit easier can maybe be done very soon. Digitalization, also as Jérôme said, is something that was well, we had to do it anyway, and now it will be done faster. That I think we can see that everywhere in society in the moment, that the whole digitalization process goes a lot faster than we maybe thought it will go. In Germany, we spent now an awful lot of money on schooling, for example, which we never had really digitalized, and now lots of money is going into it, and that will stay. Some of the things that will stay. So yeah, I'm getting used to this. I liked it the last 2 days here. It was okay. But on the other side, I also want my normal life back. I'm traveling normally 100 days a year. like most of the others here too, and I'm missing my life a little bit, I have to say. So I also want that back, and I want to stay with somebody in a room and speak to him directly. So it's okay. Yes. It's the new normality to make these DG markets now, obviously, but it is not what I really want. Alternative distribution, yeah, we had a lot of time, which we normally don't have, now with the company with Deckert Distribution, and we use the time actually really to put our films online, what we refused also quite a long time because the income was not that good. And now we see also that there is more income coming from that side. In the last 2 months, we really saw that. So we are now busy in putting our films online and see what is coming out of it. We are here on a documentary film festival, so we are in a way very lucky compared to the fiction film people, because we still have the possibility to sell our films to TV. And there is a market still for that. And as I said before, it's even getting bigger in the moment because they cannot produce anything.
The key question might be, to what extent could an alternative distribution market compensate for revenues which you might have got from more traditional sources? Of course, with documentaries, not all, you've had immense success with some documentaries of theatrical, but one can't say that about all documentaries that they will go theatrical. But I think that's a big question
it's even the exception. It's even last year Honeyland, and that was sold worldwide, but otherwise it's more the exception that you have a documentary that is doing very well internationally in cinemas. I mean, on a regular basis. No, but you cannot compensate. You can compensate with documentaries, maybe the few theatrical things that you have. But I think we will even get more money out of TV sales in the future. Digital, it's, well, a year ago I still said, well, if I'm getting a good dinner out of it in a month, then I'm happy. Now it's getting really a little bit more, but it is not money that you can make a company or build a company. It's not enough for documentaries.
Right. The audience might wonder where you go for dinner, of course, what restaurants you go to, but...
the one down at the fountain in Lyon.
Would anybody...
I think it's called.
Oh, right. Would anybody else like to talk very briefly about alternative distribution? Because quite soon we will be asking for questions from the audience.
Can I don't know if you hear me very well. It seems I have several connections. Is it okay? Comes through?
Yes, I can hear you saying.
I just, I think we try to monitorize a little bit what happens throughout the world, especially around the French films, but also other films. And in Europe, it's pretty much clear that the experimental phases, like saying we go VOD or TV directly instead of doing theatrical, is really not the case. A lot of distributors do want to wait how the situation goes on and do the theatrical. I mean, that's for feature films more than documentaries, of course, but to go theatrical as soon as it's possible. I think the only country that really successfully, that's the question, but does it on a regular basis is the US. But the US, and the difference with Europe is that they are already used to go much more sooner on VOD, etc. And that also the way, especially on foreign speaking films, the way they release films, it's on a very small scale, one print New York, maybe one print LA, Washington, etc., and then go out wider. So this is a little bit easier to combine in a release strategy with a VOD or a VOD release attached than in Europe, where you go out on a wider range with more investment. And that just to shift it and get the figures that could be the figures out of a theatrical box office is not the case in Europe, at least for the moment, which also what makes me think, and what we had with the discussions, and maybe that's also, I think it's important to outline, suddenly theaters, cinemas, it's coming back as the main it's the first step out for a film, out to the world, out to the public. So actually, of course, all our platforms do buy films and have films and offer films, and they have a great business right now, etc. But still, what everyone is missing in the film business, but also in the public, is this cinema experience. And somehow, in all these difficult times, there's something that I think is. I think it's also worth to say loudly that suddenly the importance of cinemas, the way how our films get distributed, I mean, of course, after festivals, but once the festival sets out the film and then it's getting into the theaters, is really important for the career of films, and it still is, and especially our European films. So we should not forget about that, and it's not just up we go VOD, it's not true. So of course we will see how it evolves, but I think it's important to say, well.
When you talk about the importance of cinemas, you're talking about in revenue terms as well. So that is very important.
Revenues, crucial. And of course word of mouth, etc. Like how to get a film. The film exists because also they go into the cinemas, but it's revenues. Yes, it's the basis, and that's what I'm hearing all the time from distributors, etc.
So the films which are going straight to VOD, do they tend to be a certain kind of film, which the distributor says that can go to VOD, but I'm going to hold back, and the producer agrees with a certain other type of film? Can you see any differentiation between the films which are going to alternative distribution at the moment and those which aren't?
Well, in Switzerland, they all go straight to VOD. We don't have regulations in the law restricting films going straight to VOD. So right now it's an interesting period to check how distribution is working. If a distributor has the VOD rights, sometimes he's going straight to VOD, or with interrupted theatrical releases, they went partially straight to VOD. There is a distribution company which works with the cinema screens in Switzerland, and has a revenue share of 50-50. And you can choose your screen. So if you live in Zurich, but you don't like the art house cinema in Zurich and prefer to watch the film in Geneva, I was staying in Zurich confined, then you might watch the same film as in a cinema in Geneva, and the revenue share is going back to the cinema and to the distributor, except the popcorn, of course, which you cannot eat really, and this is about the thing that is problematic sometimes. But there are some, and it pays them more than a dinner, but it's not it's just a compensation which works right now.
Right. My last question is on production. And I think that Roberto has already talked about this, but it seems to me that one of the crucial challenges at the moment for production is one of the bloodlines for European cinema, which is international co-production. Almost every single important art film these days are co-produced internationally, sometimes by up to 10 partners. And I wonder, Laurent, Roberto, if you could talk about this challenge to international co-production at the moment in an age of COVID. And then we can take some questions.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, the major problem in this period is the fact that the borders are closed. And they will stay closed for a while, and when they will open again, I don't think it will happen very quickly, meaning that people will not travel as fast as they used to do before. Do not forget that there is a huge question about the insurance, how insurance is covering the risks connected to second wave, a third wave of COVID. I think production will slow down. And that's the reason why I've seen many national funds have poured a lot of their production funding into development funding. Why? Because this is giving a bit of oxygen to companies waiting for production to start again in the normal way we know it. I think national funds, and Laurent can speak about this a lot better than me, will have to prove a lot more flexible in terms of requirements for artistic and technical cooperation in co-productions. Eurimages comes at the end of the financing process, so basically we give the rubber stamp once the national funds have green lit the project. So maybe Laurent can speak better whether they wish to, at national level, be more flexible in satisfying the needs of bilateral treaties or other international requirements. On our side, there is all the flexibility possible.
Right. Laurent, could you comment on Roberto's question?
Well, I think the fact that the borders are closed is something we discussed also last week with lots of colleagues. The problem is that, especially for young producers or younger producers that don't have that they want to co-produce or have done a co-productions, they need sometimes the physical contacts, they need the contest or the context, and they must be encouraged somehow. And we try to get these connections. As long as we cannot travel, it's going to be hard. So we hope that we can also physically meet again. Regarding the funding flexibility, I think that's something we try to implement, except keeping the deadlines for applications, because that's also encouraging people to apply more for development fund, more for treatment funding or whatever, and also raising the funding intensity of the automatic film funding, like these fonds de soutien for distribution or production, is really important. So the companies have more flexibility, as Roberto said. So it's on different levels, but the most important is to relaunch the co-production activities and contacts, of course.
Right. I have some questions which Violeta Bava, our co-head of industry, has very kindly sent to me. One is for Daniela. The question is, does your sales agent experience help to think of alternatives in that field going online?
It's better if I'm not on mute. Well, I hope that generally speaking, my sales agent experience is helping UniFrance and the directions. I don't know if it's helping specifically for the online questions, because as Heino said, I think some of the more author-driven films and documentaries, they did not necessarily have a very clear online, we didn't have a clear online strategy or possibilities, because actually either it's theatrical or it's more TV-driven, with sometimes a platform coming on the top. But I think what helps after many years in sales, I've seen also the sales, but really shifting. So I think the quality of adapting, I think sales agents as producers, but even sales agents, I think they have to adapt so quickly to what's going on, because you have a lot of countries that change quickly. It can also be geopolitical questions, etc. So you are very used to adapt your business model in a quick way. And I think this is what you learn. So I hope that some of it goes into UniFrance and helps to rethink some of our structures. But this is partly also what I did since 6 months I've been with UniFrance now. That was from the very beginning to push the digital, like our team also more in the digital way was one of my first wishes and thoughts. So that's what we did even before the coronavirus came up. So yeah, I hope on a general basis it helps. Yes.
Thank you. A question for Jérôme. will the subsections of the Cannes market remain intact? And the questioner is asking specifically about Cannes docks.
Yes, so Cannes docks absolutely will be very active, and actually it's we will be actually running at the same time than Sunnyside of the docks. So we will have some let's say coordination to avoid, for instance, to have sessions at the same time in Sunnyside and Cannes. And for once, people will be able to be in La Rochelle and Cannes at the same time, so that's great. But yes, most of the section actually will happen. We'll have next conferences. Producers Network will work with a different schedule. So instead of having just breakfast in the morning, we will have some meetings in the morning and some meetings in the afternoon to accommodate Asia or the US. We will have, as was mentioning, a pitch session. Goes to Cannes, the work in progress a presentation will continue. So it will be a presentation as a screening on a set schedule. And the day after, we will have one-to-one meetings for people who want to meet with the projects. No, I would say that except maybe the mixers or the opening night, which are a little bit difficult to recreate, we will try to have concert every night. So with composers from film music, so to have some so nice time together, but all the industry programs, yes, will work as usual.
Fantastic. If I could ask also about animation, because the Annecy Film Festival, I believe, will be running, or at least its second week, will be running parallel to the Cannes market. You've already seen, you had a great co-session last year on the Sunday of Cannes, where you co-presented films in progress. Will you be doing a series in progress? Are you looking for collaboration as well this year?
Yeah, absolutely. So actually, the industry part of Annecy will be the week before, even if the festival part will continue until.
Oh, right. Okay.
So it will not really overlap. We will have also speed meetings about animation project, and we should have the Annecy Goes to Cannes. It's still in discussion with them, but we are really trying to offer for some of the projects will be in Annecy a kind of different experience in Cannes. They don't organize one-to-one in Annecy. We will have one-to-one in Cannes, so it's also a good opportunity for those projects to try different kind of online meetings.
Can she elaborate a little on how the Dutch festivals will collaborate over the coming months?
I guess that's me, but I didn't hear. I got sort of blocked. I don't know what happened. So what we are looking at is we will obviously have to do quite some investment in the technical backend of everything that we want to do content-wise. So therefore, we're already collaborating on different projects. For example, with IFFR, we're working on the Filmmakers at Risk project. So it's we are sharing with the Netherlands Film Festival and IFFR a similar database that we've co-developed a few years ago. So it's just a very logical way of working for us to do this together with the several festivals in terms of funding and development. We are working with many of the same partners for projection technique and things like that. So we will be working with those people as well to develop hopefully this technical backend. And there, because as I said, and Jérôme of course is doing this with Cannes, we will need specific, we can't just do everything in Zoom or Google Hangout. We will need specific, as CPH was using, specific Zoom lobbies and back rooms where you can meet and things like that. So they will have to cater, just like we set up our own festival database, which is completely catering to the things that we want to do on an industry level. And with the festival, this is going to hopefully work like that as well. And yeah, obviously we have a strong connection. So that's content-wise, we work with the Netherlands Film Festival on a project called BoostNL, where we co-develop projects that have been supported by the Hubert Bals Fund and Dutch projects. So that's a year-round program which we will be doing. And anyway, even though the industry section of Utrecht is going to go completely online. So yeah, those are a few examples.
Thank you. A question for Heino. Are German or European producers teaming up differently to face this crisis? I think the emphasis is on the word differently.
Producers, you mean now, or what was the question?
Yes, are German or European producers
I have no
teaming up?
idea. I don't know how others are doing it, but I think we all have the same problems at the moment. I don't see much difference. I mean, in Germany, of course, it's different because culture belongs to the lenders in Germany. So all these are kind of, when I listen to Laurent, this is a national thing, it's decided in Switzerland, and then it is that, and that's in Germany a little bit more difficult, as we always have to see what the different lenders are doing, and then it comes together in the IFFR or BKM, and we will see. But no, I don't see really a big, as we heard today before, the problems are everywhere the same. We cannot shoot.
Yes, yes, exactly. Another question for Marit. You're proving very popular. Have you readapted or reshaped the team configuration of the festival and market thinking of the online version? And if so, how?
Well, that's a little bit too early to say. Of course, all our expenses at the moment are a little bit frozen, and thoughts about attracting the team. But if we are going into an online world, as I think Jérôme will probably experience the same, we are going to need new qualities in people. So that will definitely affect slightly the way we build up the team. But it's too early to really talk about that now. We have a core team anyway. All our temporary staff usually leaves at the end of February or in March. So we are working with a very small core team at the moment, and we'll be developing as such. Usually, of course, before summer we start gearing up already towards increasing the team in September. But we luckily have some time to think about that. So. But yeah, we will require new kinds of qualities also in terms of, and the way, for example, now I work together with the IT team is even though that has already been quite integrated, it's going to be even more so. So.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Another question for Heino. Is there a way to encourage broadcasters to invest in the future of the industry by reaching out to producers now? In other words, by investing in project development?
That's very different anyway in the different territories. If broadcasters invest in development, in Germany normally not very much, especially not in co-productions between TV and broadcasters. But as I said before, it's a new normality here in the moment. And I think in the moment everything is possible because we are all in the same boat somehow. You know, as I said before, the broadcasters have a big problem in the moment. I'm asked already. I had to deliver a 5-part series in September, and I got already 3 telephone calls if we can maybe bring this to the broadcaster 2 months earlier, because they are just in the need. So I think there are all kind of new possibilities in the moment, and you just have to try it.
Right. Maybe I could ask you, beginning to wrap up, a general question to all of you, which would be, if you had one piece of advice or tip to give to our audience of 203 participants at the moment, of what to do or what not to do at the moment at a time of global pandemic. And Heino has.
Yeah, I would like to start, because I got already in the last 3 weeks, I don't know how many proposals on a filmmaker being alone in quarantine at home. And I think 10 proposals at least. So you don't have to do that anymore. And to be honest, I wanted to do one, and I proposed it to TV on the 3rd day of quarantine in Italy. and it was refused because they had already one.
Ah, there you go. Laurent, Daniela, do you have a piece of advice, a tip? And thank you, Heino.
Well, actually, continue to work, being flexible, and yeah, that's about it, I think, and being optimistic, and yeah, and I think that's it.
Daniela.
Well, I think is don't stay alone, like try to connect as much as you can, discuss. And I think the word solidarity should be one that is like on our screens every morning, thinking, how can I participate, that something is going on, that it's maybe bigger than my personal project, but how can we all work together to make this to go through the crisis, and then make, as someone said, out of the public, make people come back to cinemas, make our, like, just keep our cinema alive. So I think this is for me solidarity, I think.
Thank you. Roberto, a piece of advice.
What I would say is make yourself heard. I think this is a moment in which things can change. As I said earlier, in Eurimages, we took the opportunity of this COVID-19 to modernize, to give it a push in terms of online decision-making and dematerialization of the whole process. So this is the moment in which maybe things can happen. And thinking of, for instance, the person who asked, how can we convince broadcasters to invest more in development or in production right now? Well, I would say through association of producers, because one person alone does not make the difference, yes. But a group can pressure government to oblige broadcasters to invest more. People are watching a lot of TV. Time has come for the bigger ones to help the more fragile ones.
Right, thank you. Jérôme, do you have a piece of advice?
I think everything has been already said, but just being a little bit lighter, I would say from June 22 to 22nd, stick on your door a paper saying, I'm not here, I'm in Cannes.
Yes, that's a good joke, but it's always there's also a serious point that, of course, Cannes, when you're in Cannes, people understand that you're quite busy and you're not going to be doing anything else. And I think that is one of the challenges of the online festival, to convince everyone that they will only be doing the festival.
No, it was a joke, but yes, I think it will be certainly something very interesting to see how much on 5 days people from home, or I hope from office, will be able to stay concentrate on watching films, watching pitch, listening projects, or meeting with people. So it's a job, but it's for us a real question. So we hope people will be able.
Fantastic. To. And Marit, I think we still have.
I hope that Jérôme will send around some bottles of champagne as well to all of us. And I'm happy that my kids are back in school in June, at least partly, so I can have that focus, because I think it's crucial. I agree. I think stay connected. As I said, I'm happy that after May 11th, I will have a little bit more focus, but I think it's very, very crucial to keep talking to each other. But it also requires a lot of time at the moment for people homeschooling their kids and trying to make this new way of working productive. So I think staying connected, and also we focused on collective ways of working, and I think Berlin did the same this year, and I'm trying to figure out how we can still support that. So collectivity and connectivity, I think, are very crucial, and also think outside of the box and create new things together and look at it in a positive way in terms of how we can turn this around constantly in a positive way. And I'm also struggling with that, but I think we have to do this together.
Great. Two last questions, I think, because we're almost coming up to the time limit. One is from Jérôme Treyes at Docs Barcelona for Jérôme. The question is, what about the We Are One Global One Film Festival in YouTube, showing films apparently for free in May? I'm not quite certain if the suggestion of the question is, do you see this as a rival, or do you see this as a positive initiative?
So it's not a rival because Cannes is part of it, so it cannot be a rival. No, but I think maybe there is some miscommunication, and as far as I understand, I think the idea is more to show maybe some master classes or some content, not necessarily a full feature film. So it's what I understood. So, but I think it's a great initiative, and I think it's of course great to get the interest of people on films and also in festivals and finding and imagining new ways for festivals also in that situation.
Fantastic. Maybe my last question or relayed question, which the question is, can we hear from the panelists their thoughts and their anticipation of how much the COVID-19 crisis is going to change the content of documentaries approaching production? Is the urgency of the current situation requesting, or rather pushing, for a change of documentary narrative? So I wonder if anybody could take that on. Maybe Heino, because you are a specialist and have been very successful with documentaries.
To be honest, I don't think so. It's coming up, this question very often, is the world changing after, or, and I think, yeah, of course it will change. Like we said, there will be more digitalization, we will be quicker and things like that. But on the other side, I think that still most of the people want their normal life back. And same as with telling stories. I mean, why should a virus change the way of how we tell a story? Right. I don't think so.
Daniela.
I think that this is a more personal statement, but I think we can we can really trust artists, because I think, and especially documentary filmmakers, because they usually sense reality more quicker than we do, and changes too. So I think we can be very confident that there might be a shift in the way of course, what they say, how they tell stories, but they will find their own way. And it's, I don't think that there is a specific need of any one of us to be in a way, even as a producer. I think there will be stories coming up that might be different. I think there's a discussion that I have already experienced, is more than that some films, but not necessarily documentaries, but there might be some narrative films that might seem a little bit out of the rank right now. But as Heino said, people want to go also back to their reality before. So I think it will probably be quite back on track at the end. But I think we can trust artists. They will find a way of telling us to.
Great. Thank you.
That's why we do documentaries now.
Yes. Thank you very, very much to everyone. I'd like to remind you that this is the second in 3 industry talks, and there will be a third one, which will be on the impact on filmmakers, which is something which Daniela has just referred to. Some distinguished filmmakers will be talking about that. I believe it's tomorrow, but please check. I wouldn't like to get the wrong date. Thank you to our audience of 191 people, and I have a technical request for the panelists to stay online and close their mics when we finish the talk, and we go back to the lobby, which is roughly now. So thank you very much, and have a good evening, a good morning, or a rather late night. Thank you.